Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftandbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic manner. Today, we are exploring one of the most talked about proteins in the health and longevity community, and how its mind-numbing effects may be originating somewhere other than the mind. And before we go any further, I know what you're thinking, and although it's a good guess, the protein is not production team. They're mind-numbing in a different kind of way. We are talking about one of the top suspects in the pathology of what may be one of the scariest diseases around: dementia and Alzheimer's, otherwise the umbrella term for overall neurodegeneration. This toxic protein has shown to accumulate in the brain, forming plaques, slowly killing neurons and deteriorating minds. This is amyloid beta, a common byproduct of cellular metabolism, which is typically cleared or washed away when our body is operating efficiently. However, and unfortunately, the majority of the population has unknowingly ventured away from this operating efficiently prerequisite, and thus have increased their risk for this and other toxic cellular accumulation. I know, not cool for biological school or biological business, or for that matter, definitely not cool for biological retirement. Did I cover everything? Oh, okay, cool. So today, in the next 15 minutes and 15 seconds, we're gonna review the recent discoveries around the origins of this brain-melting protein and talk about 3 critical components that support and even accelerate its accumulation. Oh, and you know we always like to end with the things that you can do to put your pretty cool meat suit and 5-pound mushy membrane in the best position to operate efficiently. The good news is I already have a full video made breaking down my dementia prevention strategy. So that's a good next stop if you're looking for some tactical strategies to implement today. With that, and without further ado, let's boogie. First, a word on Alzheimer's and dementia in general. There's no denying that Alzheimer's disease is a growing problem in the Western world. It affects an estimated 20 million people worldwide, and is the 4th leading cause of death in the developed world. And sadly, these numbers are only projected to grow. The most common causes of dementia in older individuals is characterized by neuropathologies including synaptic and neuronal degeneration, amyloid plaques, and neurofibrillary tangles. Amyloid plaques are primarily composed of amyloid beta peptide, which are typically abundant in the brains of patients with Alzheimer's. The other protein that is commonly associated with this pathology is tau, which we will save to cover for another day. Now, here is the super important thing about dementia, and this is something we cover in depth in my dementia prevention video. Dementia is a disease that develops slowly over time. And we're not talking weeks and months slow. We're talking 10, 20, 30, 40 years slow. And it's thought to be caused by the slow accumulation of the aforementioned toxic proteins to the point where they begin killing neurons, driving a barely noticeable gradual decline in executive function, memory, and overall cognition. And by the time it is evident that something's going on, the damage has been done. This is a disease that is truly scary and truly heartbreaking. And despite billions of dollars being put into research each and every year, there's only one cure, and that's prevention. The good news is we are learning more about early signs of the disease each and every year, some even being outside the brain. Whoa, I know, right? So let's take a look at them. What happens in the brain is influenced by what's out of the brain. For years, it was thought that the amyloid beta buildup that ultimately leads to neurodegeneration originated in the brain. And this accumulation, in combination with impaired clearance mechanisms, such as the glymphatic system, which is the brain detoxification system that activates during deep, slow-wave sleep, was the main way in which this disease propagates. Although that is definitely a big player, new data indicates that these toxic proteins could very well be coming from other parts of the body. In fact, recent bioepidemiological studies show that systemic measures of amyloid beta in the blood correlate with an increased cerebral amyloid burden and cognitive decline in Alzheimer's disease, indicating a strong association between blood measures of amyloid beta and patients who go on to develop Alzheimer's. And this can even be seen decades before onset. But how's it getting there? Well, there seems to be an association between these high levels of serum amyloid beta and plasma lipoproteins, particularly the triglyceride-rich lipoprotein of hepatically derived or liver-derived very low-density lipoproteins. You mean the lipoproteins that carry fatty acids and cholesterol throughout the body? Yep, those are the ones. And evidence has mounted from several preclinical studies that a peripheral triglyceride-rich lipoprotein amyloid beta vascular risk pathway exists for Alzheimer's, which show that amyloid buildup on the walls of the arteries in the brain may be a consequence of organ-derived amyloid beta, carried there by triglyceride-rich lipoproteins. Oh. Where exactly is it coming from, though? The peripheral impact. First, it's important to remember that our body is a finely tuned survival machine, having multiple mechanisms to keep it running in the face of acute stressors. We know this because we somehow made it through several 100,000 years of evolution as the modern species we are today, without Siri, Alexa, and Google answering our questions.
That was easy.
I know, hard to imagine. I'm perplexed on how we survived too. But when these biological systems are tasked with chronic stressors, such as nonstop psychological stress, ultra-processed diets, sedentary lifestyle, harmful environmental toxins and pollutants, and deprived sleep, our pretty cool meat suit and 5-pound mushy membrane can only do so much. And new research has identified that dysfunction in one of our main metabolic detoxification organs, the liver, may have a key peripheral link to the accumulation of this plaque-forming protein in the brain. And here's why. When the liver is under constant injury, as it typically is in metabolic disease, it exhibits decreased detoxification capacity. In normal scenarios, hepatocyte or liver-specific cells can act directly on circulating amyloid beta, promoting its clearance through degradation or through bile excretion. Further, amyloid beta uptake from circulation can be mediated through a low-density lipoprotein receptor called LRP1, which is highly expressed in hepatocytes. But when the liver is in a state of distress or dysfunction, it is often accompanied by low LRP1 expression and high levels of circulating amyloid beta. This correlation suggests that amyloid beta clearance decreases due to low hepatic LRP1 activity. Now, one of the main forms of liver dysfunction is a condition which 25% of Americans currently deal with, and it's called NAFLD, or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is characterized as fat accumulation in the liver, which brings about increased levels of oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, and inflammation. All no bueno for biological business. This condition is tightly associated with insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, which also happens to be tightly coupled with the neurodegeneration mechanisms of Alzheimer's, driving some experts to call this neurodegeneration of the brain type 3 diabetes. Whoa. So how exactly does this protein get from the periphery to the brain? Well, we have some new animal data that actually shed some light on that. Researchers cleverly disabled one group of mice's ability to express amyloid beta in the brain and showed that periphery-derived amyloid beta is carried in the blood by triglyceride-rich lipoproteins, similar to what's been shown in humans, and is passed from the periphery into the brain, finding that the mice develop neurodegeneration and brain atrophy, along with neurovascular inflammation and dysfunction of cerebral capillaries. Damn. But isn't there supposed to be like some sort of barrier to block and filter out the bad stuff? Why, yes. Yes, there is. What the hell is it doing then? The blood-brain barrier's role. For reference, we do a deep dive into the importance of the blood-brain barrier and why a leaky brain can cause a flood of problems right here. So if you want to roll up your sleeves a little more on the topic, it will be linked below. But at a high level, here is what's going on. Just as you may have heard the condition leaky gut, describing how the epithelial cells that make up the gut lining loosen, allowing bigger and potentially problematic proteins, compounds, and organisms through, well, the same thing kind of happens with the critical barrier that governs what gets in and out of our brain. This is called leaky brain. And it's a condition where the endothelial cells that comprise the blood vessels, regulating entrance into the confines of your 5-pound mushy membrane, become damaged and thus make your blood-brain barrier more permeable, causing dysfunction among key transporters and receptors that regulate the entrance of nutrients, vitamins, peptides, proteins, and hormones. But it don't stop there. It also impairs the brain's ability to eliminate neurotoxic molecules and metabolic waste. In fact, one of the receptors that is shown to drastically decrease when the body is in a state of metabolic dysfunction is LRP1. You remember that one from before? This receptor is not only expressed in the hepatic cells of the liver, but also has been shown to regulate what gets in and out of the brain, and is needed for systemic clearance of amyloid beta. Oh boy. Yep. And a common characteristic of Alzheimer's is the reduction of cell surface LRP1 concentrations. And interestingly enough, both the conditions of leaky brain and leaky gut seem to be tightly associated, sharing a lot of the same underlying causes. So rebuilding the resilience of these two barriers is a great and essential place to start the healing process. And you can find tips and strategies to start doing just that in some of the aforementioned videos and also videos I'll link below. So what does this all mean and what can you do? Well, in my eyes, this is just another example of how the body is ever connected. It's not isolated into walled off operating silos, even if that's how modern medicine attempts to treat it. This example just happens to highlight one of the scariest and increasingly problematic conditions that we humans face. So I can't reiterate the concept enough that we need to build long-term sustainable habits that put our body in the very best position to operate efficiently in the short term and the long. So much of modern disease is preventable. And in the case of neurodegeneration, prevention is literally the only cure. By prioritizing the foundational components of health, consistent high-quality sleep, eating real high-quality food, daily movement, and a healthy non-toxic environment, you can accomplish most of the heavy lifting, putting your pretty cool meat suit and 5-pound mushy membrane in a position to feel refreshed, restored, rejuvenated, and energized each and every damn day. And thus, each and every damn year. And thus, each and every damn decade. And thus, you know what? I think you get it. I recommend you checking out the videos on my dementia strategy and the blood-brain barrier overview for specific action items around supporting a healthy, clear thinking, efficiently operating, happy mind. They may not solve a headache like having a lazy production team, but I guess what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? Damn it, guys. Guys, that wasn't the sign off. You know what? Cut. Oh, now you turn it back. We're done. We're done.